Good morning, all my Christian brothers and sisters out there. This is Rick the Disciple with another episode of a podcast for the real Christians here who like to listen and discuss Christianity as it really was, as it really is in the scriptures. This is another episode where we're going to discuss today. What I want to talk about was Christianity is a way of life and not a religion. As always, I would say if this is your first time listening to this podcast, I would say first listen to some of the previous podcasts. That'll give you a good frame of reference and context as to what we discuss on here. And I can say we, but I'll say what I discuss on this podcast and all the podcasts. It's about being real Christians. I want to emphasize that it's about real Christians, being real Christians, not religious folks. I'm not affiliated with any religion, and whatever your religion is, that's fine. Just don't bring your religion up in here, as I will always say, and you hear me say that a number of times. Support the show, like, subscribe, and share with others. You can support me on Patreon. You can support me on the $5 level if you like what you hear, or you can support at the $15 level, where we get into some deeper discussions on Christ's teachings. You can support the show through Cash App, The Disciple Rick, and Cash App. And if you need to reach out and contact me, I appreciate it. Any feedback you'd like to give, questions you'd like to have answered, things you'd like to present for discussion, reach out to me at rickthedisciple@gmail.com, and we'll be sure to get into some of the things that you bring forward for discussion. Now today, as I said, we want to talk about Christianity being a way of life and not a religion. If you listen to some of the other podcasts, you can see that I'm emphasizing that point, but I'm saying how it was done, or showing ways in how it was done. Now I want to talk just directly about it. Look into what the Bible says about it, about Christianity, how we can use that for us today. So let's get into something here. There's a scripture at Acts chapter 9, verses 1 and 2. Those two verses are the premise for what I'm bringing forth today. It says, "But Saul, still breathing threats and murders against the disciples of the Lord, went to the high priest and asked him for letters to the synagogues at Damascus, so that if he found any belonging to the way, men or women, he might bring them bound to Jerusalem." The way, you notice. And that's why I say a way of life, not a religion. At first, before they changed the name to Christians, and even though they felt it was by divine providence that the name be called Christian or Christians, it was the way, because it was a different way of living, as what Christ had introduced, and those early disciples understood that. When we think about how Christianity is seen today, there are various denominations of Christian religions. I mean, there's a lot of denominations of Christian religions. I mean, too many to name, for real. I mean, we know some of the big ones, but I mean, it's just too many to name. And I'm gonna tell you that the Christian religions, and I'm not trying to offend anyone who's involved or takes their religion very seriously, but the way those religions are caricatured, it's just funny as hell. I mean, really, it it really is when you stop and think about some of those. Because the religions, especially, you find those some of the black religions, they caricature them. It's just funny, because these are these high praise, these big choirs, these fantastic robe religions, and they got the charismatic preacher or pastor up there, and he's got this big personality, and I love it when I've heard this when he's talking, and whoever it is playing the organ behind them, like I just find that I just find it so funny. I can remember there was a Martin episode, and Martin was playing Mother Payne, and they were getting together with all his family was getting together with Gina's family, because they were about to get married. This is on the show. And Mother Payne came in, and he came in as a character of Mother Payne, and then she got the Holy Ghost, and he was running up and down the aisle with the Holy Ghost. I'm telling you, that was one of the funniest Martin episodes ever. I mean, if you, some of you guys may remember that, but that was a funny episode. I'm telling you, because they caricatured these things, you know. So, and see, I didn't grow up in the black church, and so I remember I was at an event at a hotel, and there were there was this religious group, this Pentecostals, who had a big, what they call a convocation or whatever it was, at the same hotel. And this lady just like burst out where the convention was, or wherever they were having their thing. She burst out the door, so she starts walking up and down the hallway. I guess she was speaking in tongues. And my mouth dropped open because I had never ever in my life seen that before. I didn't know what she was saying, but it was like, I can't believe, what is she doing? So it was surprising to me, but to all the other folks there, this was normal. No one paid her any attention. So this had to be normal. So when I saw her doing that, it reminded me of that Martin episode. So my mouth was open, but I had to turn away to laugh because I started thinking of Martin. It was like, man, that's a great connection. Oh, wait, and maybe here's another one. You remember when Bernie Mac was alive and Nike had him do a commercial with LeBron James, and LeBron James was the chosen one with court vision, and Bernie Mac was the preacher. I'm telling you, that was a great commercial. That was a great commercial because they caricature these things, and it's if you're just in black culture, even if you never participated in it, there's a familiarity with it. Yeah, and that sound, that particular sound, and how they go about things, it's just somehow, you know, we pick it up through black culture somehow. And man, I gotta tell you, it's funny as all get out. And when I see those things, you know, I laugh. I really can't help it. It's just funny, even though I was never a participant. I never grew up in it, you know, and that's how in the black community a lot of these churches are seen. Now, I don't know about some of the more conservative churches. Like, most of my family grew up in the Catholic churches, and I remember going to, this was not so long ago, when my aunt died, my great aunt died, and I went to her funeral. And there was nothing in particular about the service. I wouldn't even know how to caricature that. It was just, okay, it was a service, all right. And I'm not sure how they do with the evangelicals. I remember the Jim and Tammy Faye Baker. I mean, when they were caricaturing them, boy, that was funny too, because I remember the pictures. I remember that dude on there crying with the microphone, and you know, Jim Baker had that double chin, right? And so the thick part of his neck was all wet. That was funny. I'm just telling you, it was funny. Yeah, so, and they beat him up pretty bad, you know, once it came out what he was doing, and he's crying on there, telling the Lord he's sorry, whatever it was, and he got caricatured, and that was funny. So, you know, that's how people see them, and you can't get around that. And I know that a lot of people take this very seriously. They take their religion seriously, and I don't mean to disrespect their religion, but I mean, for real, that stuff is funny as hell. You just gotta laugh at that. Well, anyway, all right. Being with all seriousness now, the Christian religions are typically something that you do on a Sunday morning. You know, some people take it 4 and 5 hours at the church, yeah, whatever. But it's something that you do on Sunday morning. Now you go, you hear the word, you hear the choir, hear the preacher, whatever they doing, then you go home. And here's the biggest thing, is that the religion has very little impact on people's conduct and their life choices and lifestyle. That's the key. It doesn't change who you are or what you do. It's just where you go on Sunday. And that's how it is. Literally, I'm serious. That's how it's seen. And one thing that I've seen too about the religion is that the church, along with the religion, they had little impact on the community surrounding it. So the people who attended that church, and you look especially in black communities, that church had no impact. the community surrounding it was still bad, so it wasn't effective in the community. So it wasn't affecting people's conduct, their life choices, or lifestyle. So it was just church. It was just a religion, something you did on Sundays. That's the way it was always seen. Now I'm going back then to Acts chapter 9 verse 1, where it was called the way because Jesus' teachings were about changing the conduct of thinking. Jesus even went after the thinking to affect then the lifestyle. And that's how it was. So let me give you some examples of how Christian teaching was to go after the way you live. When Jesus was giving a Sermon on the Mount, he was talking about wrath and anger. He says in 21 and 22, you have heard that our ancestors were told you must not murder. If you commit murder, you are subject to judgment. But I say, this is Jesus, but I say if you are even angry with someone, you are subject to judgment. Now, this particular translation, like I said, all of them bad. I don't really care. This particular translation uses angry, but the word they used there was orge, which is org. It's really wrath, right? Wrath is different than anger. Anger is like a burst of emotion that expresses a feeling. But wrath is something different. There may have been some feeling of anger, but wrath is when a person is really non-emotional and he's determined to punish the offender because the offender has affected or broken some moral compass or code of the person who was offended. So that's the difference between wrath and anger. You're determined to punish the person because they broke a moral code that you have. So Jesus was saying there that even if you continue wrathful, being determined to punish someone based on what you feel your moral code or compass, that you are subject to judgment. So you have to be careful because you can take your wrath too far. Because the imperfection of humans, we're going to go too far with what we do, taking things far too personally. So Jesus was going after the thinking. All right, he wanted us to change our conduct based on the thinking. Let me give you another example here. 1 Corinthians 6, 9 through 11, where Paul says, don't you realize that those who do wrong will not inherit God's kingdom? Don't fool yourselves. Those who indulge in sexual sin, or who worship idols, or who commit adultery, or are male prostitutes, or practice homosexuality, or are thieves, or greedy people, or drunkards, or are abusive, or cheat people, none of these will inherit the kingdom of God. Some of you were once like that, but you were cleansed. You were made holy. You were made right with God by calling on the name of the Lord Jesus Christ and by the Spirit of our God. See, so what Paul say? That's what you used to be. You've changed. So the teachings of Christ had an effect on their conduct. Ephesians 4:31 and 32, get rid of all bitterness, rage, anger, harsh words, and slander, as well as all types of evil behavior. Instead, become kind to each other, tender-hearted, forgiving one another, just as God through Christ has forgiven you. Again, you're changing your personality, right? You're not filled with rage and bitterness and anger. Now you got harsh words and slander for the people around you, your family members. There's a change in who you were as a person, who we were as people. Philippians 4:8, and now, dear brothers and sisters, one final thing. Fix your thoughts on what is true. Again, attacking the thinking. Fix your thoughts on what is true and honorable and right and pure and lovely and admirable. Think about these things that are excellent and worthy of praise. Okay, so going after the thinking. 1 Peter 2:12, be careful to live properly among your unbelieving neighbors. Then even if they accuse you of doing wrong, they will see your honorable behavior, and they will give honor to God when He judges the world. Say conduct. 2 Peter 3:11. Excuse me. Since everything will be destroyed in this way, what kind of people ought you to be? You ought to live holy and godly lives. See, so the whole thing is that Christianity was the type of life that you led. Your conduct had changed from who you were before. The neighbors would be able to identify the Christians because I remember when he acted like this before, but now he's like this. He's a total different person, he or she. So the person's way of life changed. So it didn't matter about, going someplace on Sunday. and hearing the word. The purpose of even them getting together as Christians was to hear the word so they can go apply it in their lives. There was no focus really on meeting together. The focus was on going and doing this stuff later, and then I can rely on you to be a Christian, to love me just as you love yourself. So I should be able to rely on that because we're Christians, right? So it was to affect the thinking, the conduct, and the way of life. See, so it's not about what people say, in terms of being religious. I was a friend of mine. We went to, this is several years ago, we went to IHOP. We were going to meet up for breakfast. So we get there and I see this black guy, and he's holding hands with his daughter, like 4 or 5 years old. She was a little big thing. And he signals to me, he waves to me, and I wave at him. And he's got a big smile on his face, walks over to me. Hey, brother, how you doing? I'm doing pretty good. How about you? Just being friendly. He said, oh, I'm pretty good. Wasn't you over there at so-and-so church? I don't know where it was, so-and-so church. I was over there because I was there and I got saved. And I was like, oh, you got saved at that church? Well, no, I can tell you, I wasn't there when you got saved. So I'm not trying to humor the guy, but I'm just trying to be respectful. But truthfully, I wasn't there when you got saved. So what it turned out, I think the guy was a bit trying to hustle me. I don't really know for sure. But he had his daughter with him. He introduced his daughter and everything to me. Oh, hey, how you doing, young lady? I'm fine. Okay. But I thought he was trying to hustle me because he asked for some money so he can get something to eat. Now he's at IHOP on the inside, right? So he says he's saved. Okay, you know what? I don't know if you're saved or not, man. But you're a Christian. At least you're claiming to be a Christian. And here we are, me and this guy I'm meeting with, my friend. We're 2 Christians also. So I'm gonna make sure that when you and your daughter leaves, and because he had his daughter with him, when you all leave, y'all gonna be, you got your necessities. So I made sure I just bought them breakfast. That's all. No big deal. I mean, a man and his daughter. I bought him breakfast. He said he's a Christian. I'm gonna take you at your word. There was no skin off my back. I bought him and his daughter some IHOP. Hey, but him saying he's saved meant nothing to me. In the long haul, because you're just making that statement. But I don't know if it's real. So that's what people say that they're saved. That doesn't mean anything. So we have to watch people's conduct to determine whether this person is a real Christian or not. And that takes time, it takes discernment. See, Jesus talked to us about this in that illustration in Matthew chapter 13 about the wheat and the weeds. So if you go back and just look at that parable, Jesus is saying that to the untrained eye, was a bearded darnel. That's a type of weed. The bearded darnel and the wheat look the same as they grow. It's not until the harvest, to the untrained eye, that you can tell that bearded darnel is really a wheat, not a weed. Is a weed, not wheat. So it takes time for us to discern whether someone is a true Christian. We may have to watch to see their pattern of growth, watch their conduct, watch all that before we say, yeah, that's a Christian. Or maybe not, really. Because how are they trying to live? See, we have to watch those things. So Jesus told us the identifying markers of whether a person is a Christian or not in his Sermon on the Mount. So if we think back to it, when he first said, watch out for the false prophets. Now, again, as I mentioned this before, a prophet doesn't necessarily mean a teller of future events. That's how people interpret it, but that's not what it really means at the core. It really just means someone who speaks the message or the will of God. That's it. And there were certain prophets that were blessed with the ability to foretell some future event that was coming up. But that was God-given, of course. Some prophets were just prophets. They came, this is what God's message is, and they may foretell of a future event, but it's just because it's part of God's message. This is what's going to happen to you, and it wasn't, this is what's going to happen to you if. I'm saying, God told me this is what's going to happen in this amount of time. So that's what a prophet really was. It was a person who could just tell the message of God. So Jesus said to watch out for the false prophet. How can we tell a false prophet? Well, we look at their personality and the work that they do. He said, by their fruitage, their produce, we'll recognize those types of people. Someone can say to you that they're a preacher, a pastor, or whatever, but do they really live as a Christian? Watch how they treat someone of the opposite sex. What are the standards that they live by in their own life? Have you looked at their own family? Do they really live a Christian lifestyle to be calling themselves a preacher or a pastor or a deacon or deaconess or whatever they want to call themselves? I don't really care. But you have to watch out for their lifestyle. That's a basic in understanding. What type of life do they lead? They can claim they're Christian all day, but they don't live like a Christian. He talked about in verses 21 through 22, it's people who will say that they're Christian, and Jesus said, not everyone saying to me, Lord, Lord, on that day is going to be accepted in the kingdom of the heavens. What was he saying? Why? What did the people do? Well, they did some big things, but they did their own will, not God's will. In other words, they lived how they want to live, and just because they did some noteworthy things in their life and their lives, that does not mean that they were a real Christian. Again, you gotta look at people's lives, because that's what Jesus is going to be looking at, our lives. So he's telling us the same thing. It's the produce. It's what they put forward. It's their fruitage. And then what he says is that they did their own will, not God's will. Well, what exactly is God's will? That's what he covered in 24 through 27. God's will is for us to build our life and our conduct on the foundation of Christ's teachings, and then we mature from it. And you can tell also from what Jesus says, what Jesus was trying to clarify with the disciples. He was saying that it doesn't matter if you claim. Watch what happens, especially when there's life pressures. Do people collapse? See, will their families collapse under the pressure? And that's why I said, if you build on this foundation, the foundation being my teachings, you mature from that, which is the house. When you talk about if you build your house on the sand mass, and then if you build your house on the rock mass. So listening to his teachings is building our house on the rock mass. See, that's how we develop. That's where we start from. That's the foundation. We build our foundations on those teachings, the foundation of our life. And then as we live, we mature through things. And then that can help us to determine, I'm just going to use the word, that can help us to judge whether someone else is a Christian or not, because we have to make determinations in reference to who we're going to associate with, who we're going to allow into our circles. And let me specify this. Yes, you can judge. Okay? I mean, I get a lot of these millennials talking about, no, you can't judge. Jesus said, don't judge. Look here. We don't let these people tell us what Jesus actually meant. How did Jesus say you can't judge when in chapter 5 he was talking about judging? See, that makes no sense. What it is, the Jews understood what Jesus was getting at, okay? They understood when he said in chapter 7 and verse 1 about not judging. All he was talking about was don't judge on matters that are none of your business. Okay? It's personal matters. And see, Paul, the Jews understood this, but see, Paul had to help them understand further when they start interacting with Gentiles as Christians. See, so that's why he talked about, y'all talking about food and particular days of the week and, just personal matters, stuff that's none of your business. That's nothing to judge over. Judging means really making a determination of a person's guilt or innocence. And what people are saying when they say don't judge is they want to live their life a certain way. They want to get in whatever conduct they want to get into. They don't want you to make a determination as to guilt or innocence on any sort of standard. That's what they're talking about. Don't judge. No, I'm going to judge. And if I judge you guilty, me and my family won't be around you. You stay your ass over there with all them people who are non-judgmental. But I'm not bringing my kids over to you. I'm not putting you around my family. So we do have to make a judgment, because what Jesus is saying is that you have a foundation, but then through making determinations in your life on how you're going to bring forth your conduct, to show your conduct, you will mature. That's what it was at Hebrews 5:14. Where Paul was talking about that. He said, but solid food is for the mature ones by constant use, having trained the senses for distinguishing both evil or good and evil. The senses here, what Paul was talking about, were the abilities of perception. And he's saying that you have done targeted training on your ability to distinguish both good and evil. You're learning to navigate the constant potholes in life. Why? Because you've trained yourself to identify what the potholes are, and now you've had to make certain judgments on how you live, how you deal with certain people, who you will deal with, and to what extent you will deal with. Do you approve of certain conduct, and will you have that conduct, that person who has this bad conduct, let's say, you determine that it's bad, you judge that it's bad, then are you going to have that person around you and your family? So yeah, you do judge. Yeah, we judge all the time, and we're supposed to, because it's the only way we can mature. And it's the only way we can let people see their own consequences. Let me give you an example. Now think about this. So let's say you're a married Christian woman, okay? And you have a sister. Now, you and the family know that the sister, she's unmarried. Now she has children. You're a married woman with children. You know your sister's a little wild. You know, the family knows she's wild. They've been knowing how she is. She's got and has had various boyfriends over the years. But when I say boyfriends, I mean boyfriends that come stay with her. They live in her place, wherever her place is. Okay, so this is your sister. You know how she is. She's kind of wild. So let's say she's got, among her children, she has a daughter. Her daughter is very close in age to your daughter. And so she says to you, girl, I'm having this, my daughter wants to have this sleepover. So bring your daughter over such and such a night so she can sleep over with my daughter cousins. You know, they're going to sleep over. So here's the question. Knowing your sister's wild, knowing her lifestyle, would you let your daughter sleep over her house? See, this is what I'm getting at in terms of judging. When our powers of perception, our senses, are trained to distinguish both right and wrong, see, now we can navigate. But you know, when we navigate, we have to make choices. We have to make choices as to whether we're going to stick with godly principles, and maybe it's going to offend some family members, but which relationship do you want? Your relationship with Christ and God, or do you want your relationship with your family members? See, and that's what we have to think about as Christians. We really, this is another reason why, you know, being in religion has affected me, and I'm sure it's affected so many of us. We've allowed institutions to make us weak. Religion is an institution, and the school system is an institution. And what I'm getting at is that with these institutions, it's always someone else dictating the terms for us. We accept them. We don't even know why we accept them, but we just accept them. Or we accept them because, well, perhaps this person in this institution has some authority. I mean, we're some of us who are Gen X, all right? We're in our, 40s and 50s now. I think we've lived enough life to see that it doesn't matter what degree a person has, they're not an authority, nor should you respect them as an authority. Just because your daughter or son's teacher at school went to school doesn't mean they're a better teacher than you. So they're probably not. Just because they got the degree, well, so what? I think we've lived long enough to see that. But we've allowed institutions to make us weak. The religion dictates what's morally right and what's morally wrong. And we're just supposed to, what? Accept that, right? Why? Because they have some authority? No, I don't think so. See, what Jesus taught us in Matthew chapter 7 was build a foundation on my teachings, and then you can mature by using these teachings in our daily life, these principles in our daily life. See, so it's, you build a foundation on the rock mass. You build a house, which is a life on top of that. So if he taught us that, then he's saying that when the storms come, because there will be storms that will come, they're going to affect us. We're going to have some trials. We're going to have some difficulties, but we won't reach the point of collapse. That's the important part of it. We won't reach the point of collapse. So when we go back and we think about things like that, decisions that we must make for ourselves and for our family, where is our Christianity, our ability to think in a mature way? Where does that weigh in all these things? Let me give you an example, or excuse me, let me give you a scripture. This was Ephesians chapter 4, verses 13 and 14. It's explaining why we build on the foundation of Christ, and then we mature, and then we will have other Christians and brothers and sisters who can help us to reach the level of maturity. It says may all until we all may attain to the unity of the faith and of the knowledge of the Son of God, unto a complete man, to the measure of the stature of the fullness of Christ, so that we no longer might be infants, being tossed by waves and being carried about by every wind of teaching, in the cunning, in the craftiness of men, with a view to the scheming of deceit. The maturity as a Christian helps us, or gives us the ability to discern the results of a teaching or anything that we hear that tells us how to live or how to act or how to think. We can pause, take a minute, think on these things, think long term. What is the result? Has there been something similar that I've seen? And what was the result in these people's lives? She said we can do that, make those decisions ourselves. See, but the problem is that we've allowed institutions like religion, schools, and such to dictate what's morally right instead of learning what Jesus taught for ourselves. See, and then what do? Once we learn that, we get the experience of living them. And that's what's going to make us emotionally and mentally strong. But because we don't do that, or in certain aspects of our life, we allow these institutions to do it for us in our behalf, this makes us mentally and emotionally weak and dependent. It causes problems in our life and family because someone else now is dictating how we're supposed to think. That dictates how emotionally we act. I mean, really think about some of the things that our religion may teach us, and maybe you've had some of the experiences where a religion may have, taught something you're supposed to do something some sort of way. There's a conflict between you and your family based on that decision. Or based on us accepting the decision of the religion, for instance, to do things, and they say that this is the right way to go about doing things. Now we're in conflict with our family, and it can be silly stuff. A religion has a particular ritual that they want you to do. Look, just for instance, you have a particular holiday, right? I don't know if this works with folks, but let's say Mass, okay? And of course, the church wants you to come to Mass, and they want you to come to Mass on Christmas Day, right? Now, the family gets together on Christmas Day. They go and visit each other, they give each other gifts, or do whatever they have to do. But the church says you're supposed to come to the church to do Mass before you do anything. You have to do your Mass, okay? Because you have to give glory to God, the church says. But your family members, you got them coming to town, they waiting for you to go to Mass. This is just an example. And now everybody's mad because you went to Mass instead of meeting with the family. Well, the church said I have to go to Mass. Well, who is the church? See, what power do they have over your life to tell you that you've got to do this? And then it's causing conflict with your family. It can be a number of things. Whatever the religion or the school or whatever the institution is, when they dictate to us what we must do, and then we get our thoughts and emotions all mixed up with this and say, okay, yeah, this is what I got to do. Well, you know what? That's mentally and emotionally weak. We haven't trained ourselves, our senses, our abilities of perception. We haven't trained them to be able to make the decisions for ourselves, and that can really, it causes problems within the family. It really can. And that's one thing that I've noticed growing up in religion, the conflicts with the parents, because the religion said do this. I kid you not, I remember I was listening to a couple, a married couple, and the wife said to the husband, well, Pastor so-and-so said. And I'm like, and I look at the husband, and what the husband said, yeah, he did say that. I would have been like, woman, take your ass over to live with him. Then if Pastor said don't work in my house. It don't work with me. I don't care what that man said. But see, we we've the principle of the man being the head of his household. No, pastor said don't work in my house. So, but I'm saying that's just one example of something that I saw. A man capitulating to what some other man said. No, that don't work. So we got to think about these things, brothers and sisters. We have to think about the allowance of the religion to be in our everyday life when they have no authority to be in our everyday life. See, because what we're talking about is Christianity is a way of life, not a religion, not an institution. The institution has no power to dictate anything on what we do. It's only the power that we give them. But if we haven't taken Jesus' principles in our life, his teachings, and then built upon them in the sense that we've used these things to train our powers of perception, our abilities to perceive things to where we reach a state of maturity, then somebody can come in with any old thing, any teaching, saying, or what instruction for us, and now we're tossed about and we can't understand where it's coming from. We can't understand how it affects. We can't see long term what it will do to ourselves and our family. Let me give you some examples. Okay, let's take this one here. Now you're a son. You're a Christian man, but you're married. You're a married Christian man. Now your mother and your wife don't get along. Your wife is coming to you because it's causing problems between, they have their problem. Your wife doesn't like the way the mother deals with her, the little things that she says. It's causing problems between you and your wife. So here's my question. Who should you correct? Should you correct your mother? Should you correct your wife? Or should you take the time to correct both of them? Now, I want you to think about that. Who should you correct? Which one of them should you correct, or should you correct both of them? Now, if you say you should correct both of them, I'm going to tell you, this is, again, my opinion. I think you're wrong. You shouldn't correct both of them. You correct your mother. If your mother cannot accept your relationship with your wife, the relationship that you have with your wife, then that should cause strain on the relationship you have with your mother, and now you need to dictate terms. Why do I say that? What did Jesus say? Repeating in Matthew chapter 19, 5 and 6, repeating the words of Genesis chapter 2, verses 24 through 26. He says, from what his father said, that a man must leave his father and his mother and stick with his wife, and they must become one flesh. So the two are no longer two, but one flesh. Therefore, what God has yoked together, let no man put apart. No man or no woman, one man, pull apart. Your mother does not have a say in your relationship with your wife. So your mother may not like her personality. Well, tough. You ain't married to your mother. A man leaves his father and his mother and sticks with his wife. And if his mother can't accept that, or that you're married, or your mother doesn't like the fact that you're married to this particular woman, then you need to leave your mother and let her know that the relationship is going to end unless you accept and respect my decision. You ain't got to accept it free, but you're going to respect my decision, which means respecting my wife. There's a principle right there. And you know what? Your mother will get in line. She will. So those are things that we have to think about. Again, hey, this is my opinion, but I'm thinking that I got the sense of what that principle means and how we conduct ourselves off that principle. Let's throw another one out there. I think I mentioned this before, something similar to this, but your daughter is in a class with a teacher who assigns them a book to read whose subject matter clearly are against Christian teachings. If she fails to do the assignment, or the assigned reading and report, her grade will fall from a B to a D. Should you have your daughter do the assignment? Now, I'm going to say no, she doesn't do the assignment. Why? Ephesians chapter 6 verse 4, where it's given instruction for fathers to go on bringing their children up in the discipline Okay, and the admonition, but I want to focus on the discipline. The Greek word for discipline is paideia. That's the term, that's where we get the word pedagogy from. Understand that as a father or as a mother, as a married couple, you have the authority to come up with the pedagogy for your child, not the school. You can use the school to supplement what you teach your child. But as a Christian, you bring your child up according to the pedagogy of the Lord. So your training program can fit in aspects of the school. In fact, you have to tell your child what to accept and what to dismiss. Well, we ain't paying that. That's no big deal to me. You have to tell your child what to accept and what to dismiss. Show them what you care and not care about. When I was growing up, it was like the school grades were law in the household. It didn't matter what type of teachers we had. And look, I had some really good teachers and I had some really stupid teachers. But the school was law. No, the school shouldn't be law. Do you know what curriculum they're teaching? Do you know what type of influence it's having? So what do you want me to do? Do you want me to obey you or the school? Say, okay, well, I got to obey the school in order to obey you. That makes no sense. Because it's the parents' responsibility to come up with the pedagogy for their children. So if you say you go down to a D, you go down to a D. Well, we're not going to do that. That violates, our Christian stance on something. So she's not going to do the assignment. Well, she's going to get a worse grade. Well, you ain't that great of a teacher anyway, and I don't take your teaching that serious. So that's okay. She can go down to a D. Anyway, so I know them teachers wouldn't like to hear that, but that's the truth. It's the truth. You don't base your pedagogy on what a teacher at a school says, who is not in control of the curriculum and who doesn't see the curriculum as a whole and understand the effects on the child. That makes no sense. Need to homeschool them children. Okay, all right. I'm not trying to tell you how to run your house. I'm just saying. Certain things we really have to think about as Christians, as what's important. We have to think in depth more of a level of maturity so that we're not caught by any wind and trickery. We don't know how, if you haven't looked at the school system and the pedagogy that the school system has put forth, then you don't know what they're trying to do to trick your child. Honestly, I would say, if you want to get a sense of what the school system's intent is, read books by John Taylor Gatto. I mean, he was a teacher in New York, won the Teacher of the Year awards for the state and everything, and he rejected the entire school system because he saw the effects. He was so effective as a teacher because he just strengthened the student to do certain things. And because he won the awards for being the Teacher of the Year, that's the reason why he had to leave the school system, because now people were spotlighting what he was doing, and what he was doing was against the curriculum and pedagogy of the New York school system. That's why he had to leave the school system, because now you're spotlighting me, and I'm teaching these kids, and I'm not teaching them according to the pedagogy, the curriculum that you assigned me, because that curriculum, I know what it does. It's damaging. So anyway, that's what I mean. As a parent, a Christian parent, get to know what the school is doing to your child. But in the end, God holds us as parents accountable for the pedagogy of our children. So we just don't surrender that to the school, because we're the ones responsible. All right, let's take another one. You have a son. Now, it doesn't mean your son's a Christian, but he is your son. Your son gets a girl pregnant. The relationship sours quickly, and it turns into a hate-hate relationship between the girl and your son. And because the relationship has turned to a hate-hate relationship, the son feels like this girl trapped him and got pregnant on purpose, blah, blah. And now he wants nothing to do with the child because of the child's mother. Now, here's the question. Should your relationship change with your son as a result of his decision, or should it stay the same? And I'm going to tell you, brothers and sisters, in my opinion, I base this on the principle at 1 Timothy 5:8, which you may hear me repeat several times. The principle there is that if a person doesn't take care of those who are his own, then he's worse than a person without faith. Okay, so I'm saying, yeah, that relationship should change. If this is the type of man he decides he wants to be, you gonna make a child, you should better care to strap up. But you're gonna make a child now, because who she is now, you don't want a relationship with her. You didn't really determine that you should have been having sex with her to have children beforehand? Couldn't you see the character of her beforehand? No, I don't care if you're young. No, we don't play that game here. So those things we got to think about. So I'm saying, as a mature Christian, the relationship has to change, and the son has to know, I don't play that. You don't violate a standard in this household, and a standard that I've had with you to take care of you and love you, and now because of the relationship with this woman, you don't want to have nothing to do with the child. Oh no. And I asked that question. The reason why I asked that question is because I've seen this on a number of occasions, and you know what I've seen? I've seen that the parents have never held the children, the sons, accountable for the mistakes or for the children that they fathered, because of the character of the woman that this child, that these boys have had sex with and got pregnant. I have seen that, and I just can't believe that they would do such a thing. That you would relax your standards with him. That's God does not relax his standards with us. We have to live up to them. We can make a mistake, but then we have to endeavor to come back and do it the right way, to do the right thing. You don't have to marry the woman, but you do have to take care of your child and raise them and train them. Anyway, okay. Here's my last one. I don't know if y'all like these. I may get some negative feedback on these, but that's all right. I'm going to ask them anyway, all right? The pastor at your church, there's a pastor, let me say, at a church that you and your wife are members, okay? So this is for your husband. So there's a pastor at the church of which you and your wife are members of. There's a time when you're not there, and the pastor reprimands your wife, but you're not there. He saw her getting out of pocket a little bit, and he pulled her to the side and reprimanded her. And so whatever the situation was, she comes home and she tells you what happened. You investigate a little further, and you find that he reprimanded your wife. Now, when you hear the story again, you agree that she should have been reprimanded because, in truth, even out of her own mouth, she was out of pocket. So, should you A, thank the pastor for reprimanding her because you know how she can act? B, threaten to whoop his ass if he ever reprimands your wife again? What you think? Well, I'm going to say B. You threaten to whoop his ass if he ever reprimands your wife again. You went to that church, but you are the head of your household. 1 Corinthians 11:3. The man is head of his wife. What role then does the pastor have to reprimand your wife unless she had a gun on somebody and she was about to pull the trigger? Okay, well, man, maybe a good swift reprimand would be good. Maybe tackling her may have been good. Okay, but if it's not something on that level, no man reprimands your wife. No man reprimands your wife. And you at a church, they have no authority. Oh no, reprimand my wife, man. Okay. Yeah, there'd be a problem. But I guess that's probably why I'm not a member of a church now. So, ain't no man gonna reprimand my wife. I ain't gonna let a cop reprimand my wife. Anyway, that's just me. No, that's my relationship with my wife, that my God assigned duty. If there's something that my wife got out of pocket, then I would do it. That man showing respect for God's arrangement of headship should have just took it in stride, just asked the sister to calm down, made a phone call to you. Say, hey, look, brother, let me kind of tell you something that went on. And then he tells you, maybe you ask a few questions. Okay, thank you, I appreciate that. Hey, so I just wanted to mention that to you, It ain't my business, but I want to say that to you. She shouldn't be acting like that in here. But I didn't say nothing to her. I'm just going to respect you as the head. All right, brother, I appreciate that. I'll take it from here. And then, you talk to your wife, find out the situation. Maybe she did handle it the right way when dealing with someone else. But that's your decision on how you handle that. It's not his decision to reprimand your wife. See, these are things that we have to learn, especially as Christian men. We have to learn when it's time to man up on certain things. man up with, maybe our mother, maybe our own father. That's, my father was a man. I don't mean a male. He was a man. And you can only push him so far, even if you were his superior, especially. Now, if you weren't his superior, you couldn't push him anywhere. But if you were his superior in terms of maybe a supervisor or a boss or something like that, you can only push him so far. I remember my father telling me a story that happened between him and his boss. That, it gave me. It basically, I'll tell you, it unlocked in me the strength that I had knowing who he was, and it was a strength being in me unlocked it for me when his supervisor, his boss, tried to do something to him, playing a little game with him, and they got into a discussion. The supervisor was being unreasonable, and so my dad is trying to reason with him that it was basically about how to contact him. Just briefly on the story. My dad was a supervisor too, so we're talking about his boss. His boss wanted him to carry a pager, but my father was like, "Hey, you know what? I've got a work phone, a work cell phone. I have a work walkie-talkie. I have a home phone. Why would I need a pager? That makes no sense. You have all these ways of contacting me, and well, I want to be able to contact you immediately. Well, look, just leave a message. I'll call you back. Hit the contact beep on the walkie-talkie, because you don't know what I'm dealing with at a certain time, and I'll call you right back. There's no big deal." And he goes, "No, I want you to have a pager." So he gave my dad this pager. And so my dad never turned the pager on. He's like, "All right, well, look, you gave it to me, fine." He just left it in his car. I never turned it on. So to be ignorant, he would always call my dad on the pager, but the pager's off. And just to tell you how ignorant this is that you had to dial 10 digits to call the pager, then you had to punch in another 10 digits for the phone call back. Well, you could have just pressed a button on the walkie-talkie. You could have dialed 10 digits or just a quick dial on the phone to call. That makes no sense. So they get into a discussion because he was always trying to contact my dad on the pager, and my dad left the pager in the car, and he never turned it on. So he basically just lost it. He lost track of it. But he wasn't going to have a pager when you can even text him on the phone, right? This text capability, so you want some outdated pager, right? So this thing reaches ahead, all right, and they're in the office talking and going back and forth with this, and it's escalating, right? And so they're going back and forth. My father said, "I don't know what. I tell you what, you can take that pager and shove it up your ass." I was done. I was laughing so hard when he told me that story, but you know what? My father was a man. He was only going to be pushed so far. And I had so much respect for that story. I never lost sight of that story, because at a certain point in my life, in dealing with my dad and some things he said to me, and I'm a grown-ass man at this time who has my own wife, and he makes a statement to me, and I had to shove it right back in his face. I don't give a damn if you're my dad or not. You don't run nothing in my house. And you know what, my dad, he caught himself, because he was looking at me as his son, and he briefly lost sight of the fact that, no, your son is grown now, and you don't have a say in my household on how I do things. And I had to check him, but I was a man. See, I'm not a teenager. I'm a man, and I made my decision for my household, and he understood that immediately. Hey, all right, Rick, I apologize. He understood it immediately, because he's not going to let any man, including his own father, dictate anything in his house, because of the type of man he was. So I'm saying to you, brothers and sisters, is that we have to mature. My dad had maturity on that headship principle, and we have to get maturity on that. Even if you didn't have your father in your life, you have to get maturity on the headship principle or other principles that relate to being a Christian husband. And remember, our relationship is with God through Christ. We get other people out the way, He'll give us the people that we need in order to mature. He'll surround us with people, or just give us one person who can mentor us on whatever particular aspect we need. But brothers and sisters, we got to do it. That's what it comes down to. If we have to do it, especially if you're a man, we have to do these things. So I mentioned these principles to you so that we all can get strong together as Christians. And I'm sure there are other principles that you may know of, scriptural principles that you may know of that you've matured in, and reach out and share those with me. I love to hear stories about how a person applied a Bible principle in their life and it worked out for their benefit. See, we talk about the teachings rather of Jesus in the Sermon on the Mount. And I love the part really with Matthew chapter 7. And it took some time for me to kind of understand, how the Bible is structured. They're structured by chapter and verse. Okay, and that's good. But sometimes with the chapter and verse, it takes some thought and meditation to see where a context of a discussion ends and where another one picks up. And really, Christ will help you understand his words. So there's nothing wrong with that. Christ will help you to understand. We just read it and we pray over the matter. But here's something that I came to understand. We know what the principle calls the golden rule, right? That do unto others as you would have them do unto you. Well, basically what that was the summation of Jesus' teachings that started at Matthew chapter 5, I want to say in verse 14, where he said, you heard it said, do things this way, but I'm telling you, do it this way. And he said also that I didn't come to destroy the law or the prophets, but I came to fulfill. Okay, so he was starting now a context at that point that led all the way up to Matthew chapter 7, verse 12. Now he was summarizing it in that golden rule from what he was saying, do unto others, right? That's what that was about. Now he started a new context in Matthew chapter 7, verses 13 and 14. And it says, enter through the narrow gate. For wide is the gate and broad is the road that leads to destruction, and many enter through it. But small is the gate and narrow is the road that leads to life, and only a few find it. Well, what was he talking about? Was he talking about life and death and permanent destruction? The interesting thing is that he was not talking about permanent destruction for a person. In the Greek language, there were actually two words that were translated destruction. And one of the words means complete annihilation. I want to say that word is apoloumi or something, apoloumi, and that means complete annihilation. And Jesus did not use that word in Matthew chapter 7, verse 13. He used the word apoleia, something like that to that effect. I don't speak Greek, so I don't know. But he used that word. And that word means basically a ruined life. Okay? Sometimes they translate that word perdition, but it doesn't mean that your life, that you are destroyed, completely annihilated, you die. What that destruction means is talking about you have a destroyed life. And come on, we can look around in some of these cities that we live in and we see people whose lives are destroyed. We see people's lives who have reached the point of ruin, whatever it was. We have people who are homeless, and they're homeless because their lives have reached a point of ruin. They may have lived in a home at one time, they could have been married at one time, but something happened and their lives became ruined. And what Jesus is saying in that verse is people can reach, and people will reach, many will have these destroyed or ruined lives, whereas few people will have a good life that comes from living by his teaching. So he's actually starting the context to show a contrast. That's why he got down to verse 24. In verse 24, he's talking about building on the rock mass and building on the sand mass. Listening to his words, obeying his word is building your life on a rock mass, so that when the storms come, see, and we're maturing from that, when the storms come, your house does not collapse or ruin. It doesn't come apart. But he says that if you build your house on the sand mass, somebody else's teachings, other than his, then when the storms come, then your house will collapse or ruin. And he's using the house to represent the life. that we have. So it's either destruction or good life. That's what he was talking about. And if you want to see a contrast of the two words for destruction, look at John chapter 17 verse 12, where both words are used. The traitor Judas Iscariot, when Jesus was referring to him in that verse, said that he's the son of perdition or the son of destruction. Now, that first one was perdition, destruction, a ruined life, but he said none of them are destroyed except for the son of destruction. So that first word destroyed, none of them were destroyed. That's where you're talking about complete annihilation. He was the one who faced complete annihilation, but he was the son of a ruined life, basically, is what that's saying. So that's the point that I'm getting at with you, brothers and sisters. It's that we want a life, a good life, a Christian life. We don't want lives of destruction or ruin. So we have to understand that the foundational teachings that we may have been instilled with, that we may not even be aware of, we have to search them out, meditate on these things and our viewpoints on certain matters to see if these are Christian viewpoints, Christian principles that we have made decisions off of, or if it's something else. Because there will come a point where we come face to face and we don't want that destruction or ruin to come because we made bad decisions based on bad principles. Though if we made decisions based on Jesus' teaching of Christian principles, then we will have a good life, because now our lives consist of Jesus, our Father, God, and us. And in that relationship, he's promising, it's one of the benefits, he's promising us a good life with him. Okay, so anyway, saying all that, say take your power back in your life as a Christian. I really enjoy being a Christian. It is a good life. Yes, we will face trials, we know that. We'll face situations, but it's still a good life. It's the best life. It's an elevated way of life. We just need to take back the power in it by standing up for those teachings that Christ has. We need to live as Christians. That's the main thing. Living as Christians. They ain't worry about what a church says or what anybody else says. We're going to live the way Christ told us to live. Okay, so look, that's all I have for today. I want to thank everyone for tuning in, all of you who are listening to the sound of my voice. Hey, reach out to me. Support the show, as I say, with our Patreon. Like, share, and subscribe. If you like what you heard, share it with someone else. Press that like button, too. You can support us through Cash App also, The Disciple Rick, Cash App. And please reach out to me. Tell me some of the stories that you've had, that you've faced in your life, where you made decisions based on Christian principles and then it worked out for you. Email me at rickthedisciple@gmail.com. I'd love to hear those stories. And if you'd like for me to tell some of those things on the air, I'd love to do that. You just let me know. And whether you want that put out on the air, I won't use names or whatever, but I just say it was from one of my Christian brothers and sisters. Okay, so that's all I have for today. Thank you so much for listening, and God bless. Take care.